everybody, we are back at the University of Guelph Arboretum. My name is Kitty. Behind the camera there, that's Jenny.
Hello!
And we are the Naturalist Interns here at the Arboretum. And we're here to visit one of our favorite places on the grounds, and that is our Gosling Wildlife Gardens. Now this is a series of gardens that is tucked away near the J.C. Taylor Nature Center here, and it is designed to teach how you can at home attract wildlife to your own backyard, which is pretty awesome. And we're gonna start up here in our pollinator garden. So this is a garden designed to help attract pollinators to your backyard. And not just bees though, this includes all sorts of things like beetles and flies and hummingbirds. So all sorts of different things. There's lots of flowers around for them to snack on. And in the corner we also have a garden full of plants for the larval forms as well. So lots of caterpillars and things like that, because it's not just enough to feed the adults. We also want to make sure we're giving lots of food for the caterpillars that soon grow up to be butterflies and other animals like that as well. So that's pretty awesome. We're going to take a quick walk through and look at the beautiful plants and see what else is here in the Gosling Wildlife Gardens. As you can see, lots of flowers in bloom to help attract lots of bees and wasps and beetles, and we see all sorts of things here. And it's a pretty lovely place just to hang out as well.
We're walking by this area. This has a big open space, and we also feature some bird feeders in this next garden. Bird feeders are a great way to attract wildlife to your yard. So it attracts a whole sort of species of birds, but also sometimes squirrels and chipmunks come by to snack as well. So this is our second garden.
And different plants have different ways of attracting animals as well. For example, these flowers are long and tube-like, maybe perfect for a long hummingbird beak to stick inside and suck out all of that delicious nectar. So that's pretty awesome. And you'll see lots of bees hanging around there as well. Lots of honeybees coming in to collect some pollen and nectar. So let's keep on going, see what else we can find. So this is our native plants garden, and planting native plants is really important because our native species have co-evolved with these native plants. So planting native plants will help attract a lot of native species and be beneficial for providing them things like food and shelter as well. And you might notice gurgling over on the side. It's a beautiful little stream. And a little frog, many little frogs hang out in our stream. So those all look to be green frogs.
He's like, out of here. Here's another one.
But adding a water feature like a stream is a wonderful way to attract wildlife to your backyard. Not only can things like mammals and birds come for a drink and a bath, but we can also host a lot of creatures like frogs and insects that spend their whole lives in the water as well. So that's really, really awesome. So beautiful little place we have here. Now, I wanted to feature a tree just outside of this garden, so let's take a couple of steps and take a look at this really special tree. So this tree right here is a pretty awesome tree. You'll notice it has these really unique trifoliate leaves and these distinct looking seeds and fruits that they produce, but this is actually called a hop tree. And a hop tree is a tree I want to pay extra close attention to in the summer because it's actually the host plants for the giant swallowtail butterfly. So what happens is, if this giant black and yellow butterfly is flying around, and we definitely have them here in the Arboretum, they might spot a tree like this and decide it's a perfect place to lay their eggs. So they're actually gonna lay their eggs on one of these leaves and out hatches a little caterpillar. Now this caterpillar is specific to the hop tree. It's gonna munch away on the leaves and feed on the leaves and grow and grow and grow. And this caterpillar is really, really special and kind of tricky to spot sometimes because it is a master of mimic. It actually looks exactly like bird poop, and that's a defensive mechanism. So that means if a little bird maybe comes along and sees this little caterpillar on a leaf, it might not realize it's a caterpillar. It might just think it's a piece of poop, and it's not gonna want to eat it. So it's gonna move on along, and that caterpillar is safe for another day. So it's really, really awesome. And as that caterpillar eats and eats and eats, it's gonna grow bigger and bigger and bigger until one day it's big enough to pupate and form a chrysalis, and it's gonna turn completely into goo inside this chrysalis actually and reform as a butterfly, and a while later out pops this beautiful giant swallowtail butterfly, which is one of the biggest butterflies we have here in Ontario, which is pretty fantastic. Now I think maybe I'll switch over to Jenny to bring you on a tour on the rest of the gardens here. Yeah, for sure. So there's a bunch of different series of these gardens, a lot of different kind of styles that they're done in, and I want to visit our last garden to feature some cool plants that we have there. And not on the list for today's feature, but there's a pretty neat little plant here that I figured that we can talk about. But if you come down here and look, this little plant might look a little bit familiar to you guys. I think it looks like a strawberry. But if you see this around, please don't eat it because this is not a true wild strawberry. This is actually what's called a Faux Strawberry is one of the names for them, and they look like strawberries, but they are not, and they don't taste very good at all, so do not eat. But they're a neat little plant that I thought I'd just point out while we're walking past. All right, so we've made it. This is the last little set in our series of wildlife gardens. And this one's really cool. You can notice a pretty small space, but it kind of incorporates elements from each of the other gardens. And it gives you guys an example of what you could do in a small backyard space, maybe in a more urban setting, the things you can add and feature to attract wildlife to your yard. So for example, if you come over here, a lovely little water feature just like we had in our native plants garden to help attract all sorts of wildlife. You know, birds will take advantage of this, mammals will take advantage of this on hot days and get a drink of water. A lot of critters live in the water too, so small invertebrates as well as frogs and all that jazz. And I already hear splashing, so I'm sure there are lots of frogs hopping away here. And not only do we have this little water feature, but we also have, if I make my way across here, native plants. So this garden is full of different native plants. And there's a really neat one tucked away in a little corner that not a lot of people know about. So if you ever visit these wildlife gardens and you're kind of hunting around these gardens looking to see what's out here, you might notice this little patch of cacti. This cacti, it's called prickly pear. And believe it or not, eastern prickly pear is a native species here in Ontario. Not a lot of people know that we have a native cactus, which I think is super cool. Usually if I'm picturing cacti in the wild, I'm thinking of deserts and scorching hot weather way down south, but we have our own very native species right here. Now I will say in the wild you tend to find them towards the southern tip of Ontario. So if you're ever maybe by Point Pelee, maybe birding during migration, keep an eye on the ground too for some cool native plants. But we have a couple of examples here in the Arboretum, a little closer for home for people to get a chance to see them as well, which I think is super fun. And not only is there prickly pear here and a ton of other plants that you can see featured, but this garden also has one of my absolute favorite trees. If you've been watching some of our other videos, you may have met this tree already. And it's grown a lot since the last time we featured it in a video. But this tree right here is a pawpaw tree. And these guys are so cool. This is a very prehistoric tree. It was around a long time ago. And it's actually an example of what we call an ecological anachronism. So if you want to learn more about ecological anachronisms, definitely check back some of our previous videos. We have a whole video featuring them. But these guys is an ecological anachronism. And what an ecological anachronism is when you have two species and they co-evolve together to form basically a partnership. And over time, if one species goes extinct, the other species in the partnership then is left without a partner. And the adaptations, it's co-evolved alongside this other species that's now extinct, is now obsolete. So now it has maybe a feature that doesn't really work anymore. There's no purpose for it. And that's what an ecological anachronism is. And these guys, the ecological anachronism that these guys have is we don't have any right now, but later in the summer, hopefully there will be some. But they form these huge fruit. And the fruit and seed is so big that no native disperser, animal disperser, can eat it and disperse the seed or move it elsewhere. So these guys have not done super well in the wild since it lost its partner, just because it doesn't have any way to disperse its seeds. So they're kind of rare to find in the wild, but a pretty amazing plants.
Yeah, and we did say this is one of our Gosling Wildlife Gardens. So of course, I'm sure there's lots of wildlife hanging around. But one that I did notice right now is this little guy right here. He's hiding a little bit. But this, oh, there's two of them. So this one right here is actually a white-marked tussock moth caterpillar. And this other caterpillar, I'm not 100% sure what it is, but these caterpillars both certainly look very spiky and hairy, and this can be a defense mechanism to help prevent animals from eating them, because they might not be as palatable to eat or harder to get to because they are so hairy. So it looks like they're munching on some leaves here. I'm sure there's lots of other more caterpillars hanging around. Looks like there's lots of things munching on these leaves, so that's really awesome to see. Lots and lots of wildlife here. Is that another caterpillar I see here? Yep, it's another one. Yeah, so lots and lots of wildlife. We definitely promised you that. So this is just another example of how lots of different native species can help attract native animals to your yard as well.
Yeah, so definitely these are all tips you can incorporate in your own garden. So things like planting native species, adding little water features, bird feeders, and all that good stuff. But you can also come here to our Arboretum. We are still open for walkthrough access currently. So definitely feel free, if you have some time, to swing by these Gosling Gardens, check out the different features, discover some new plants, and hold your breath as you stake out the spot for some wildlife. Thanks so much for joining us, guys, and we'll hopefully see you next week.